Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another show of Gregory Correa and Harmonics. Man, today's guest is a lady that actually is was a librarian, an author, and now she's made a documentary film about finding Italians. And this is the movie. This is the movie that she's actually done, and she's here today for us, Giovanna Capone. How are you, my dear?
I'm doing good.
It's so good to see you here, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
I normally wear shades, but I'm going to take them off because you have given me a light. I want to just express one thing about this movie that I seen, and thank you for letting me see it. Had so many mixed emotions on it. I was happy, I was sad, I was crying, but I cried for joy because your film it touched my heart. So I want to ask you a question. What made you so enthusiastic about seeing or making this film that I saw?
Well, I'm glad you had that response, that it evoked emotion. This film was about 4 years in the making, and I had started it early on when I was in graduate school for library science. I started taking an interest in the social clubs in Oakland, the Italian social clubs, and found out that they'd been around for so many years. Like 1920 was when they were established, Colombo Club, the Fratellanza Club in 1932. And I was just fascinated by them. And also, okay, a little background about me. I have 4 grandparents that came from southern Italy, near Naples. And so I'm, as my dad used to say, FBI, full-blooded Italian. And, yeah.
That's great.
He loved to say that.
I love it too. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. And so growing up, I had 2 very dear aunts. One of them, in fact, just turned 102 years old. Amazing.
Beautiful, so beautiful.
My Auntie Anne. And these aunts were the storytellers in the family, and they told us all kinds of family history about our relatives and our ancestors. And I just loved it, and I was soaking it up as a kid. So their contributions to me, and also just the fact that I grew up, became a librarian, became a writer. I took an interest in history, particularly the family history of my own relatives, and then of the people, the Italian-American people. And I wanted to share that with the world, and also knowing that, you know, there really isn't that much discussed about Italian-American history.
Absolutely.
In the textbooks. When we're growing up in school, you don't hear much about it.
Yes.
Even Italians themselves don't know much about our own history.
Correct.
It's somehow absent from educational environments to a large extent. And so that was another reason why I felt compelled to make this documentary, and for personal reasons, to tell my own family history. But then I was studying the clubs, I was learning about the establishment of these clubs in Oakland.
Yes.
And I wanted to put in more Italian-American history so that there's a context for why these clubs were established and what their purpose was in Oakland and elsewhere. So that was the beginning. And I heard a quote by Nelson Mandela: "Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world."
I concur. I concur.
And I love that quote.
I do too. And he's Nelson Mandela and I have the same birthday.
Oh.
So it's kind of interesting that you just said that. In your process, you were born, from what I understand, from when we pre-talked about coming on the show. You were born in Connecticut.
Right.
You were raised in New York City, or New York.
New York, yeah.
And then you came out. Why did you all of a sudden change from? You lifted up your roots. What was the reason at all for that?
Well, I mean, I came to California. When I was getting older, I didn't like the New York weather, cold weather, snow. I would always love to see like warmer climates on television and stuff. I always wanted to be in a warmer climate. I loved the redwoods. And you know, in my 20s, I decided to move out here. It was a huge decision.
And you came by yourself?
No, I came with a friend. Well,
okay.
it's a long story, but I'll tell you the short version,
Okay.
which is I came with a friend on a motorcycle.
Cross country?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
well
you're amazing.
yeah. At the time I was in Texas, so we left from Texas. So it took 3.5 days, and she was with me, a good friend of mine. She drove a car with my cat. I drove a motorcycle. It took us 3.5 days. It was a huge journey, and but what happened was, okay, you're in your 20s. You want to have a big life. You want to do something adventurous.
Yes.
And what happened was I loved California. I realized after a few years I was culturally adrift, and I had pretty much disconnected from this ethnic hub that I was steeped in as a young person, growing up in an Italian-American neighborhood, growing up with a very big extended family. And so it hit me one year, like after being in California for a few years, I'm really culturally adrift here, and I went in search of the Italians in California. And this is what I talk about in my film.
Yes. So your the film, how at least how I identified it, it's like 3 different parts.
Yeah.
You know, it talks about your roots in New York. Then you go to we'll talk about that also. Then you talk about how the Italians arrived. So let's channel right into that. The Italians, the big migration in the Italians came in the late 1800s, 1900s, and then in the 20th century they came in. How long a spell was that whole migration of them coming here?
So yes, and you're right about the 3 parts of the film. There is my family history,
Yes.
my personal history,
Yes.
the history of the Italian immigrants in general, and the social clubs and the role that the Italian social clubs played in the life of these immigrants. So the major, immigration, I would say, from Italy was between 1880 and 1924. That was the huge mass migration of 4 million Italians from Italy. Now, they didn't just go on an excursion. They were actually leaving because there were conditions of starvation. There was no jobs in Italy. There was disease. There was earthquakes, volcanoes. There was a lot of hardship there. So they were basically fleeing Italy and doing whatever they could to survive, particularly from southern Italy and parts of northern Italy, the rural parts of Italy where the farming was very difficult. Crop conditions were not good. There was disease, there was famine, and so they left. And also what was going on at that time in America, this was the end of the Civil War. Slavery had been ended, and the cities were being built. So American steamships basically went over to Italy to scoop up all that cheap labor, because there was lots of need for labor at that time. Also, the Civil War had ended. There was huge numbers of deaths from that war, losses from that war.
Absolutely.
And so they needed labor, and they went with the ships to Italy and scooped up all that labor and took it over here. So the opportunity was there for the Italian immigrants. They basically took whatever jobs they could take. Factory workers, seamstresses, tailors, farmers, coal miners. They built tunnels and dams and the infrastructure for the cities in New York and elsewhere. And there was even child labor, because at that time it was legal.
Yeah.
It was legal for children to work up until
36 or something.
1938.
Yeah. See, it was right in that time period. So they came by ship, and I've seen some pictures where they were just stacked together. Probably conditions were just terrible. When they came to Ellis Island, tell me about that story. Some of those things about how they treated our Italian immigrants.
Right, and every immigrant that came through, really.
Can you speak right over in there, because so
Yeah.
you see so right there.
Okay.
Because you're just so great at what you're doing right now. Your oral history is just wonderful. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, I want to say, if you go to Ellis Island now, Ellis Island has been converted into a museum. It's a history museum, and it's a really incredible museum. I mean, they'd have some just amazing displays. They have these huge globes, and they show the migration routes of the human populations across the globe.
Wow.
Just lots of wonderful exhibits that really help you understand what was going on at that time 100 years ago. And it's all captured in that museum, and I really recommend, if you're in New York, go to the museum, go to Ellis Island, and take a look at all that stuff. It gives you an immediate understanding of our U.S. history.
So why did, with this huge, massive group of Italians come into, why did they treat the Italians so bad?
So what happened in Ellis Island, let me just get back to that. I mean, a lot of people got treated badly.
Yes.
So you come in, there's millions of people flooding in. So between 1880 and 1924, 4 million Italians came. It was the largest influx from any one nation coming from Italy. And they were put through physical exams, medical exams, psychological exams. And if any defect was found, or if they failed the exam, they were sent back to Italy. So they were separated from their families.
That's terrible.
And also, there was a lot of fear of going through those exams because they didn't want to be separated, of course. And they also came here with no resources, very little, their clothes on their back, very little money.
So did they separate children from their families too, or
well, what I don't know. I think they separated the female, the women and the children, and then the men. And if there were any family members already here in the United States, they would try to contact those people and for a safe passage. In fact, one of the people I interview in the film talks about how his mother, when she was age 6, and her mother, they were held at Ellis Island until they could locate his grandfather, who was in Oakland. He was originally in San Francisco.
Right.
But the reason he ended up in Oakland was because of the 1906 earthquake, which happened and pretty much demolished large parts of San Francisco.
Exactly.
So any of the incoming immigrants that were in San Francisco fled to Oakland. And that was like, in the long run, that ended up building up a little Italian population in Oakland. So Oakland ended up having a little Italy for a while.
Exactly, in nice areas, in Temescal in there.
Right, North Oakland, Temescal. So basically, his grandfather fled to Oakland after the earthquake, and that's where they located him so that his mother and her mother could be reunited with the grandfather. And so conditions in Ellis Island were, I mean, there was so many people coming through there, all kinds of immigrants from all kinds of conditions in countries, just like kind of like today, there's a huge influx of immigrants at the southwestern border. And I would also add attitudes, American attitudes towards incoming immigrants were not good.
Right.
I mean, it was hostile. They didn't want these people here. I even heard somebody refer to it as Europe is vomiting. That was in some of the reading I was doing. They were saying Europe is vomiting. So they considered it, the inferiors were coming over here to dilute the pure blood of the Anglo-Saxons that were already here.
Right. Entrenched in
And so, we have the similar attitudes that we see today in the immigrants coming in from the south of this country.
Because all of us that are here, except for our indigenous people that are here first, we're all immigrants. Everybody that comes here is and it's it is. There's this very big similarity. I want to move into another thing. The guys that did come and the women that came here, they had their own talents too. They brought a lot of talent. They had art. They had their own music. They had our food.
Right.
I mean, our comfort food, the comfort food of probably the world.
Yes.
They eventually established, well, like my grandfather would say, I was in Hell's Kitchen when he came.
Right. Yeah, well, sure, they brought all of their culture here. They even brought, grafts of their, uh, their wine grapes and stuff. They brought them here so they could grow their wine here. And, they packed all kinds of stuff in those suitcases. But yeah, they brought huge amounts of contribution to American culture. But mainly they were laborers when they got here.
Yes.
They didn't arrive and start,
Dancing,
building they were mainly laborers. That's why they came here. They were indigent. They were fleeing, very harsh conditions in Italy. So seamstresses, tailors, as I mentioned, they built the infrastructure for New York City. They even built the subways. A lot of the subways, that was Italian immigrant labor. You see the tiles, the mosaic tiles in the subways of New York. That was a lot brought in by the Italian laborers. But yeah, I mean, contributions are countless. What they've given to American culture in every area you can think of, really. But it's not really reflected, like as I said. There's a way in which our contributions are not recognized. So this October is Italian Heritage Month. And I really encourage everybody to
I'll be there
to recognize it.
Well, most definitely. I think it's fabulous that we will be actually releasing your interview here today and during that month, which is a real. I didn't know about it until I said, wait a minute. October 1st is a Heritage Month and San Francisco. I remember going to, to the parades that they had. They had everybody there. But I want to move on a little bit more. After, we talked about a little bit about, you had some really great guests that talked about the history of how the arrival of their ancestors and came to Oakland, New York City, St. Louis, Detroit. Then it got to a point where World War II started.
Right. Well, there was definitely a need for these social clubs. That's the focus of my film, is the Italian social clubs. They welcomed the newly arriving immigrants. It was a place for these folks to find people who spoke their dialect. So Italy has 34 languages and dialects. There is one official Italian language now that is based on the Florentine dialect.
Interesting.
But the dialects in the various regions, there's 20 regions, they're still spoken. And so when those folks were coming over 100 years ago, the Italian social clubs were really important as far as a place for them to talk with people that spoke the same dialect, to find jobs, to find housing. These social clubs really became the center of their world. And it was also a form of a haven from some of the hostility that was going on. They were not well regarded. They were not considered the best people in the neighborhood, Italians. And in fact, there were incidents that happened, which I cover in the film. I mean, in 1891 was the lynching.
Yes.
11 Sicilian men who were lynched in New Orleans. There was a police chief was murdered, and immediately it got blamed on the Italians.
Exactly.
And there was a big sweep. They rounded up hundreds of Italians and Sicilians in New Orleans and put 19 men in prison. And then of those 19, 11 were going to go to trial. But they never really got justice because a crowd rose up in the city.
Exactly.
And some of the most prominent people in town were in that crowd. And they stormed the jail, and they grabbed these guys and beat them to a pulp and lynched them and shot them. And, it was a horrible lynching, one of the worst mass lynchings in American history in 1891.
That's an interesting thing too. Is there a movie about that, or has there ever been a movie? I don't know.
There might be. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, because it's such a little known thing. When I talk about, in the film, I mentioned there's over 50 documented cases of lynchings of Italians. Most people are shocked by that because you really don't hear about it.
You don't.
And by the way, I looked it up. There's, of course, African Americans were lynched to a huge extent.
Oh yes, terrible.
So were Mexicans,
Yes.
so were Jews, Chinese, Native Americans. So it was kind of like the form of revenge of the day, lynching. But I think very few people realize that Italian Americans were lynched, and there was over 50 documented cases between 1890 and 1920.
That would be an interesting. I think that would be an interesting. Well, your documentary right here is, it's just totally fabulous. We were talking about the lynchings, and then let's talk about you've expressed in your thing in your movie that I really kind of, and that's why I really was crying. You asked me.
Yeah,
What
you said you cried during the film.
It was really the internment camps,
Yeah.
what they did. I mean, how you showed it in your movie and all of that. It just was. It's so stark and so terrible, and it happened to my family, and my mother. She was only like, I think at that time when she was only like 10. And she remembers it exactly. They came in and took his camera, took his flashlight.
Your grandfather.
Yes, took it all. And then he was gone. I have to find out where exactly it is, but I found out the date that he probably was arrested was on February 21st, 1942. It's in and it was, I started doing some work myself, and I found out that it was in the Tribune, and I'm going to go search for that and see, because there was seven Italians that did it. What was your thought on that? And what is, I know that in your movie, other people talked about it. Why?
Well, I mean, I cover a very wide range of years, and in the incidents that happened that I thought were the most prominent incidents that Americans should know about, Italian and non-Italian.
Yes.
It's American history. And so the lynching, then I go up to the 1920s and all the way up to the World War II.
Right.
You're talking about the internment. A lot of people don't realize Italian Americans, there was internment camps for them.
No.
We know somewhat about the Japanese. Most people know who study American history.
That's where
there was more than 120,000 Japanese who were put in internment camps.
Yes.
Their businesses were taken, their property was taken. They lost like $400 million of property. So most people are aware of what happened to the Japanese, and there was a small attempt to do reparations for the Japanese, but nothing compared to what they actually lost. They lost nearly everything. But what they don't realize, we were at war with 3 countries at that time.
Yes.
Japan, Italy, and Germany during World War II. So all those people from those countries that were living here, we call them, Italian nationals, German nationals, Japanese nationals that were living here, were considered enemy aliens, illegal enemy aliens, enemies of the state, because they were considered a risk and suspicious, like, are they going to be loyal to their home countries, or are they going to be loyal to the United States? So there was a real wartime hysteria going on at that time, and paranoia. There was all kinds of things that happened that you look back on it and you go, oh my God, what a climate of hate and hysteria leveled at these incoming people who came to America thinking this is the land of opportunity. I wanted to say there is a really good book that I referenced in my film, Una Storia Segreta, The Secret Story, and it's written by Lawrence Distasi. He's the editor. He interviewed a bunch of people who were, like your grandfather, detained during World War II. And it's edited with an introduction by Lawrence Distasi. And I referenced this book, and I talked to Mr. Distasi myself to help him consult with me on that part of the film. And I'm really grateful for his input, because he gave me all the details. If you really want to get into a study of that time period,
I do.
Read his book. And he has another book called Branded, about the enemy, when Italians were considered enemy aliens.
And we had there was a bulk of how many Italian American soldiers went to all the fronts, when they were fighting to Japan. They were in Italy when they fought. They had to break it up in.
Right. Yeah.
I understand that was a wide group of men and women that served in our armed forces.
Well, that was the irony, is while there was this wartime hysteria, and hundreds of thousands of Italians were considered enemy aliens. They had to carry photo ID cards with them wherever they went.
Yeah.
They had a curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. While all that was going on, and they were considered suspicious and potentially hostile because they're going to be loyal to their home countries. So while that's going on, the largest group that was serving in the U.S. military during World War II was Italian American soldiers.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, so it's kind of ironic that yet they were proving their loyalty to the U.S. at the same time they were, being suspected of being loyal to their home countries.
You had a segment in your film that I love, because you had a film where it was on Parade. It was a Parade magazine.
Oh yeah.
I have that.
Oh wow, yeah.
I have it also. I mean, and I still kept it with me. When I seen it, it struck me, and that was another thing that made me emotional, because and then it showed people that were in the Fratellanza who would talk about it, and like you said, this book is I'll definitely go get this book because I want to read more about this. Also, let's move into another channel.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
About Lawrence de Stasi, because he's
in your movie.
I quote him. Yeah. I quote him, and
okay.
As I said, I consulted with him on that section of the movie, but I really had to dig for this information. It was not freely released. He had to use the Freedom of Information Act to get some of this stuff. It was suppressed. So not only was this going on and it's kept from the history books, the information was suppressed for many years, and he really had to dig to get it. And this book and his other book, Branded, I want to look up the exact title because it's a long title. But so this is Una Storia Segreta, the secret history of the Italian-American evacuation and internment during World War II. And his second book was Branded, How Italian Immigrants Became Enemies During World War II. So really good resources.
I'm going to definitely go search for that and get that. I definitely want to look, because I find it fascinating. You spark me in a way of wanting to even know more.
Yeah.
I wish that I could bring my grandfather or my grandparents, even my mom, to talk, because she lived it. She's seen it live and in color. Social clubs, and you talked about that. What does it mean to you? I know you're in a group of women now which is I commend you for it, man. I think it's a beautiful thing. Basil, I think that's great what you're doing and getting women together. How did you start that?
Okay, so the third group, there's 3 social clubs in the film that I discussed.
Yes.
And Fratellanza Club, Colombo Club, and the third group is a club that I formed in 1988, not long after I arrived in California, and it's called Basil. We named it Basil, Bay Area Sicilian and Italian Lesbians. And that is a group of gay women, and we come together. We're all of Italian and Sicilian background. The Sicilians are super proud, and they want to have separate recognition,
That's good.
But yeah, so when I came out here, one of the reasons I came to California was going in search of a large gay and lesbian community, and San Francisco is known for that. And it was, I think of my journey leaving New York and coming here, somewhat paralleling my ancestors' journey from Italy to this country, looking for a better life and looking for a particular life. And so I came here in search of a gay and lesbian community. I found it. I found beautiful weather and redwoods, and I love California. But as I said, it just hit me after a few years that I had disconnected from my ethnic community, my ethnic hub, which was all back in New York.
You're right.
In New York, like every other person is Italian practically.
Exactly.
There's delis on every corner, and so So once I had that understanding, I said there's got to be other gay people like me, because a lot of gay people leave their families to go in search of
Others.
their life and
So you can have a
others in
plan.
their community. Right.
Mhm.
So lo and behold, I was able to find lots of other women that had similar stories. They were, not near their biological family, their family of origin, and they were craving a sense of connection with other Italian women. So we formed this group in 1988. It's to this day, 35 years later, it's still going strong.
Congratulations on that, because probably from the beginning you probably got a little, people probably backed away from you guys a little bit, but you've now been doing it for 35 years. I commend you and your group for your heroes.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, we just did what everybody else did, try to create a safe haven for your group, And when I was making the film, I mean, I went through so many iterations with this film. At first, it was going to be just about the social clubs. And then I realized I wanted to add more Italian American history so that people had a concept of what else was going on in the United States at that time, 100 years ago. We've only been in this country 150 years.
This is true.
And people get confused about that because Columbus, he was here in 1492, right?
Right.
But we didn't get here until the late 1800s.
Right.
We didn't come with Columbus. There was no Italy in 1492. Italy was established in 1861. And so he sailed for Spain.
Right.
But people get confused about basic history like that.
Absolutely. And that's why it's very important, like how you say.
But I went through a lot of iterations with this film, and I finally realized it's about the Italian social clubs. So then, by definition, Italian social clubs based in Oakland, that includes Basel.
Yeah,
So,
it's beautiful.
Giovanna, you damn well better put your own club in the film. So I did, and then it kind of helped the film transform, because now I'm telling my own story too. And so then I looked at all the things that I wanted to add that were my particular story and my family history. Like I start out the film after my aunt. The two storytellers in my family were my Auntie Carol and my Auntie Anne.
You sang at the end.
Right. And my Auntie Carol died in 2015, and a year later I got a large box of photos in the mail from my cousin. They were all the photos that my aunt had accumulated over the years. And she wanted to make sure they got sorted out to all the cousins so that we had access to my aunt's photos. And so I got this huge box of photos with all these Italian faces and people in there that I wasn't even sure who half of them were. And it really kind of knocked me out. I was like, oh my God, here's these people, and I'm in California. I'm related to these people.
Exactly. Exactly.
Their history, their culture, their food, everything is part of me.
A part of you.
And so it kind of helped me understand how to make this film.
Yeah,
to tell that story.
Your film is because I want to get moving. I have two more questions.
Okay.
Do you think, and we talked a little bit about this before you came on, do you think the movies that have been portraying Italian Americans, like The Godfather, The Goodfellas, The Sopranos, have hurt us in a way? Because they don't really tell there's some really Raging Bull. There's some really good, great stories. Maybe one day you'll probably make a film of that, but do you think that hurt us a little bit? Because people think we're all gangsters,
Yeah, I know. I mean, well, my last name is Capone. You think I get an ethnic, mafia joke every week practically. Not kidding. I do feel that movie after movie after movie about the gangsters, and it does engender in the mind of the American public this feeling that we're all gangsters, or that's the first thing they think of when they think of us.
Yes.
It's a form of ethnic profiling. Like the first thing people think of when they think of Italians is this gangster,
Image.
motif. Yeah, and I'm kind of sick of it. You must be sick of it a little bit. I mean, I think
more to it.
Yeah, it totally impacts us. Right. And yeah, those movies are well made and they're interesting, but I'm kind of tired of that whole gangster thing, you
I
know.
think maybe one day you might go because you have a production company too, right?
It's my own production company, Capone Production.
I love it. So, in saying that, you mentioned some things. What is the change that you want to see done to Italian Americans here? What I know it's to give the education,
Right.
the storyline, but what is basically
Well,
Giovanna wants to hear? What
yeah,
she wants to let the
because
people.
that's my production company. My slogan is
Hmm.
making films that make change.
Hmm.
And the change I would love to see, well, first of all, I'm bringing information to people that probably they didn't know about.
Exactly.
Um, I want to give a sense of pride and love for your culture
Hmm.
to Italian Americans, an understanding of our history. Obviously, I can't cover everything, it's just one film, but
Hmm.
I want to inspire an interest. And like, I'm glad you're interested in now looking up these books and,
Mm,
um,
very
you know,
much so.
reading more about it because it's not taught in school. It's really hard to come by this information unless you
Dig
go
for
out
it.
and dig for it yourself, look for it, read it. Luckily, people like Larry DeStasi made the information available. Um, but my goal was to help Italians have a sense of pride and a sense of history about their own history, their own, you know, why do I know more about the War of the Roses and the, you know, the
Right.
Anglo-American history? Why do I know about that when I don't know my own history?
Right.
So I would love to imbue a sense of pride among other Italian Americans and also for non-Italians to give them a sense of who we are and we're not just gangsters, we're not, you know,
We're people.
like another thing Larry talks about in some of his books is the three P's: power, pasta, and passion. Those are kind of the three stereotypes
I could
about.
dig all three of them.
No, well, yeah, but then it's like it's also a stereotype about us. Those are the three ways people understand us: cookbooks and mafia movies. You
But I
know,
think um, this that you need finding Italians. This whole um, documentary here has changed how I view Italians now. You've made it for me. I think. Well, I know that you've been to festivals, and you're going to be showing some more. I think this is very important that this would be shown even in schools. You know, history teachers or talk to some history people that would like to have this done. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I'd like to have you back again or we might even meet again maybe when you're doing your own film festival someplace.
that would be nice.
And if there's anything that you'd like to say at the end, because we are running out of time, is there anything you'd like to tell any of your audience and some of your family members or your friends here? Would you like
Well,
to have? You
I
just
just
go right
yeah,
into there.
I just wanted to say the movie is available on DVD now, Blu-ray and regular DVD, and it's called Finding the Italians: A Granddaughter's Journey. I'm also screening it now. It's screened in the Diversity Film Festival at Rossmore in Walnut Creek. It's screened at Cinema Sisters Film Festival in Paducah, Kentucky. And it's also screened in Berkeley at the Berkeley Video Film Festival. And I'm trying to get other venues to places to screen the film because there's still lots of people I'd love to have see this film. And my other goal is to get it into public libraries for educational
Most definitely.
purposes. And yeah, so
Most definitely. Well, thank you for coming on my
yeah,
show, Giovanna.
thank you so much.
Um, this lady is going to be a force. I hope her the best of luck that she could show this film more and more to the public because it is a educational, historical vehicle so that we can learn more about Italian Americans. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much. So this is Gregory Correa from Harmonics. I'd like to thank Chad and Sue Joy for doing the work today. And God bless everybody. God bless all the Italians. And next month coming is Italian Heritage Month. So I hope to see you somewhere in a parade wearing the green, white, and red, whatever you might be wearing that day. God bless you all. And thank you once again.
Thank you.